Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the life of Abraham Lincoln, the self-taught lawyer who rose from a literal log cabin to lead a nation through its absolute bloodiest conflict, defeat the Confederacy, and, in the end, destroy the institution of slavery.
So let's start with the words that really defined his entire mission. This famous line from the Gettysburg Address, it wasn't just some fancy speech. No, this was the core principle he fought to defend. And it perfectly captures the monumental stakes of his presidency and really the very survival of the American experiment. Here's how we're going to trace his journey. First, his rise from that Kentucky log cabin. Then, we'll look at the political firestorm that tore the nation apart. After that, his leadership during the war, his role as the great emancipator, and finally, his tragic death. And, of course, his enduring legacy.
So, what forged this extraordinary leader? His story begins in the absolute humblest of origins, an environment that gave him this relentless drive to learn, to grow, and, as we'll see, to change the course of history. Just look at this timeline. The ascent is just astonishingly fast. Born into deep poverty in 1809, Lincoln had less than a year of actual formal schooling, but he was a voracious self-educator, teaching himself law by borrowing books. And that drive, that ambition, it propelled him straight into the Illinois House of Representatives by 1834. And then, just 2 years later, he's admitted to the bar. He completely transformed himself from a frontier rail splitter into a respected lawmaker.
Okay, let's pivot to the issue that would define his entire career and, ultimately, plunge the nation into total chaos: slavery. For Lincoln, you have to understand, this wasn't just some political problem. It was a profound moral crisis.
And this was the flashpoint. It just shattered all the uneasy political compromises that were holding the country together. And for Lincoln, it was a step way too far. It basically reignited his political career and gave him a crystal clear, urgent cause: stop the spread of slavery into the Western territories, period.
So those famous 1858 debates with Stephen Douglas, they weren't just political theater. Not at all. They were a national forum on the very soul of the country. And this slide just lays the conflict bare. You had Lincoln framing it as a clear battle between right and wrong. And then you had Douglas pushing for popular sovereignty, which basically means, hey, let the local folks decide. Lincoln saw that as a total moral cop-out that just normalized a great evil.
And this was the bombshell he dropped during that campaign. Even though he lost that Senate race to Douglas, this powerful declaration made him a national figure overnight. It was this stark prophetic warning that just perfectly captured the nation's existential crisis, and it absolutely set the stage for his presidential run just 2 years later. And in 1860, that divided house he warned about, well, it finally began to fall. Lincoln's election was the spark that lit the fuse of secession and, ultimately, civil war.
This number right here just powerfully illustrates how completely fractured the country was. Lincoln won the presidency with only 39.8% of the popular vote. In fact, his name didn't even appear on the ballot in 10 southern slave states. His victory, based entirely on support in the North and West, wasn't seen as a national mandate. It was seen as a regional conquest.
And the reaction to his election, it was immediate and it was catastrophic. Before he even took the oath of office, states were bolting from the Union. By the time Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter, just over a month into his presidency, the nation was at war with itself.
So, faced with this massive rebellion, Lincoln took decisive control of the war. He wielded presidential authority in ways no one had ever dreamed of before. He set up blockades, he spent money without congressional approval, he even suspended the writ of habeas corpus. Now, he argued these actions were absolutely essential to save the Union. But his critics, they accused him of becoming a tyrant and shredding the very Constitution he swore to protect.
But the goal of just preserving the Union, well, it soon became inseparable from a much, much larger and more profound mission: the complete destruction of slavery.
This right here was the pivotal question Lincoln wrestled with. He had to navigate this incredibly complex path, balancing his constitutional duties, the political realities of the border states that hadn't left, and his own deepening moral conviction that slavery simply had to end. This was an absolutely masterful strategic move, and it was born of intense pressure. Lincoln was walking a tightrope. He was getting pushed by abolitionists to act, but he was also desperate not to alienate those crucial border states. The proclamation completely reframed the war as a fight for freedom. It crippled the Confederacy's economy, and critically, it ended any chance of Britain or France recognizing the South. It was a game changer.
This quote,
though, it reveals the man behind the strategy. Yeah, the Emancipation Proclamation was a calculated military and political act, for sure. But this shows us a leader driven by this profound moral certainty. At that moment, he felt he was doing the single most righteous act of his entire life.
So the Emancipation Proclamation was a powerful wartime measure, but it didn't free all enslaved people, and its legal standing after the war was kind of shaky. Lincoln knew that to truly destroy slavery for good, it had to be written into the Constitution, and the 13th Amendment was that final, irreversible nail in the coffin.
Okay, so as the war is nearing its end, Lincoln's focus shifts from just winning to reconciliation, setting the stage for his final and, of course, tragic days.
The pace of events right here is just astonishing. In a matter of weeks, the nation goes from Lincoln's profound vision of a healing peace to the end of its bloodiest war to the shocking murder of its leader. A moment of absolute triumph turned instantly into a national tragedy. And it's because of all this, his leadership during the nation's ultimate crisis, his ability to navigate insane political division, to guide the war, and to articulate a moral vision for the country, that his legacy, for most historians, remains completely unmatched.
Wow. This powerful tribute from the great abolitionist leader Frederick Douglass, it just speaks volumes, doesn't it? It reflects the kind of character that earned Lincoln the title the Great Emancipator, and shows the profound personal respect he commanded, even from people who had once been his sharpest critics.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. What was it about him? Was it his shrewd political skill, his unwavering belief in what was right, or his incredible patience? What truly defined his greatness? You know, maybe it was that unique, incredible combination of all three. If you enjoyed this explainer, you should definitely explore the other pivotal figures who shaped our world in our World Changers and Global Icons playlist. Thanks so much for watching The Explainer. And hey, be sure to subscribe for more structured deep dives to the figures and ideas that shaped our world.